So, you're tired of getting bullied and pushed around by Parthians and Scythians, huh? Well, then you're in the right place for your Armenia faction guide. Let's start with a unit overview of what Armenia has available to them. Your infantry, you start off with the infamous Eastern Infantry with their pathetic 2 morale. Never use these unless you're extremely desperate. And then you get to access the Hillmen at their 4 morale, which is a little better for the early game. This is as good as it's going to get. These get the job done, but the real infantry units, you're going to really like the heavy spearmen with their phalanx. That's going to help you out a lot against the cavalry units of Pontus and later the Seleucids as well as the Egyptians and their chariots that come your way. Those phalanxes do a lot to stop those. And your premier infantry unit, the highest level military building that can build, are the Armenian legionaries. These have a healthy 8 morale. These use a missile weapon before charging, just like the Roman units do that you're all very familiar with. And they have an armor-piercing primary weapon. So they're actually pretty good against generals themselves and other armored cavalry. I believe what that means is that the armor unit on the unit they're fighting is cut in half. I believe that's what that little characteristic means. And moving on to your ranged units, you start off with peltasts, I believe, in one of your starting armies. This is not really useful. Similarly with archers, Armenia is actually the first faction I've played where I found the archers to be a redundant unit just because you have access to the horse archers, which we'll get to in just a moment, but these archers are kind of redundant to build. I mean, they're fine, they're standard, 7 missile attack, 30 volleys, a range of 120, that's perfectly standard, nothing wrong with that. But in practice, these are, you're better off building horse archers as your premier archer unit. Alright, so in terms of cavalry, you start off being able to build horse archers with your first cavalry building. That's why I'm hyping these up. I found these to be an incredibly versatile and useful unit. These are both, they have a missile attack of 7, which is, I believe the same as the archer. Not bad, not great either, but once you get these up in experience, you'll quickly learn that these gain experience very fast, because all they do once you put them in battle is just shoot arrows at enemy units, and they use all 40 of their volleys that they have. That is a lot of shots. They will gain experience very quickly, so these start off kind of lackluster, but these get strong very fast in your campaign, you'll notice. A weakness I should note is that they have a total defense of 2 because they have no armor or shield, and their defense skill is also 2, so either just... I would not recommend using these in melee combat ever. These are actually kind of poor in cities, I should mention. Their pathfinding in cities, when you're conquering a settlement, is actually a bit frustrating. That is a downside to these horse archers. Something strange about the next cavalry unit you unlock, the cataphract archers, is that you'll notice that they are 1,230 gold to just recruit. That is extremely expensive. I don't know why these are as expensive as literally elephants, the most expensive units in the game, but they are, I guess, for weapon balance. Or for unit balance. What do you get for that price? You get a nicer morale of 8 as opposed to 4. You get an actual melee attack. So you can actually engage these in melee combat. For what it's worth, I still wouldn't recommend that. I would still recommend using these as actual missile cavalry and just using them in place of archers, just having very mobile archers. But I guess what this gold pays for is the incredible 18 armor that these horses don. These will be very resistant to enemy horse archers if you encounter any by the Parthians or people of Pontus or Scythians. And for what it's worth, they do get a little bit of a charge boost of 5 if once you run out of ammo, you might want to use these as an actual cavalry unit. Because I found that you do have access to cataphracts as Armenia, but also extremely expensive, and these are not that much better than just using your cataphract archers as a cavalry unit. Thus, I found this unit to be mostly redundant and actually less valuable than either the horse archers or the cataphract archers. As a cavalry unit, these are slower than the horse archers because these are fast moving, and their melee attack of 7 is okay, but not great as a cavalry unit. Your generals are the best cavalry unit you're going to have all game, I believe, at a melee attack of 10 and a charge of 9, whereas these only get up to melee attack of 7. I would recommend avoiding building the cataphracts in favor of either the horse archers or cataphract archers, depending on where your economy is in the game. You also have access to an artillery piece, the onagers, for whatever reason. I found that to be a little interesting, but missile range of 300. I also found this strange that the onagers, it seems like you need at least 2 if you want to conquer a city on the same turn, because it seems to be either a bug or by design that the onagers, if you click on even the gate of a level 3 stone wall, the onager will, for whatever reason, not target the gate itself, which your units can move through, but the tower itself and the tower's offensive capabilities before targeting the gate. So do not walk into a city thinking your one onager is going to be enough to take down the gate. I don't even think it has enough ammo to break down a level 3 stone wall or higher. So if you're going to use onagers in your armies, number one, they're going to very much slow you down. That is obvious if your army is going to be a lot of cavalry. Number two, you have at least 2 of them to actually be able to open a gate for yourself. I should like to mention also that these 3 units that you see here, I'm just gaining these from the custom battle screen. I don't believe any of these units are actually recruitable. I believe these are just the mercenaries that are found in your 2 starting settlements of Armenia, but they're there if you need them, I suppose. Regarding Armenia's tech tree, I would like to add that the eastern factions get a unique trade building called these caravan buildings. They provide a trade income bonus of 20, 30, and 40% respectively as you increase them. And I learned playing Armenia that this is actually an incredible boost to your income, because some of your settlements will, as a result of these caravans, get their incomes to extreme levels of prosperity, making 8,000, 7,000, and several thousands of gold per turn, just courtesy of that 20% boost to trade, which already may be at 4,000. So do not underestimate those caravan buildings for the eastern factions. Interestingly enough, it references the Silk Road trade, which occurred back in the era of Rome 1, but you don't actually need to necessarily chain them from the 2 eastern settlements of Arsacia and Susa. You may build them anywhere in your empire at any time. It would be a little interesting if you actually had to chain these from Susa and Seleucia and Arsacia and Pharaspa, but that is not how the game works. For your early game strategy, I strongly recommend you conquer the 2 settlements to your east and enslave them to improve your economy. And the first battle you'll have is likely against the Parthians, or maybe even the rebels at Pharaspa, and that's a very good battle to actually fight with the battle map, because it'll teach you how to play Armenia, which is a very mobile army, which you might not be used to if you haven't played as either Armenia or Parthia or Scythia yet. I believe you have a city at the start of the game that can already build horse archers. You should build, I believe in Artaxarta, you can build horse archers right from the start of the game. You should build a horse archer every single turn. It doesn't matter if that takes you into debt or not, and that's a great investment for your future. And then something I noticed with Armenia is that their 2 settlements are very far away from every other settlement in the game. Like, the 4 settlements in question here that you'll quickly conquer at the start of the game are weirdly very isolated on the campaign map. So you'll actually find building early watchtowers to be very useful to warn you of any enemy Scythian and Pontic and Seleucid armies headed your way. So be sure to save a little bit of money to build watchtowers, which cost 200 gold, I believe. So after you conquer those 4 settlements, you are going to want to build 2 armies. One is already, should be roughly halfway complete. It's the one you should have conquered Arsacia with, and you can finish that army off. And the other army you should build of also horse archers to hold back any Scythians or Pontic armies or Seleucid armies headed your way in your 4-settlement homeland south of the Caucasus Mountains. The army that just conquered Arsacia, you should wait until you're ready and then build roads in Arsacia, which will help you march south and conquer Susa. There's actually no real need to build dirt roads across your empire until you actually need them to march somewhere, because most of your armies are going to be just pure cavalry armies. They'll move very fast anyway, and if there's any enemy armies coming your way, then the dirt roads are only going to help them reach you faster. So if anything, building dirt roads is to your disadvantage. Also, dirt roads, they say they provide you trade bonuses in-game, but they actually don't. Only the paved roads do that, and Armenia does not have the technology available to them to build paved roads in this game. After you conquer Susa, south there, in what is today Iraq, when the Seleucid Empire walks out of Seleucia, that should be your best opportunity to conquer Seleucia quickly. There's a 20% farming output bonus to your economy in Seleucia, courtesy of the Hanging Gardens at Babylon. So you'll quickly want to take that settlement. It's very valuable. I believe you'll have access to a spy, or you should at least build a spy to know when Seleucia will be empty. But I believe you can take a spy down south with you. And after that's done, you should be able to build a third army to head towards Pontus. You should have enough money, or you should be good enough at the game that even a half army should be enough to conquer what is Sinope and Mazakia over there. A minor point of interest I'd like to add is that Seleucia is surrounded by hostile factions, and I guess they've been programmed to be afraid of the player. So once every 2 or 3 turns, you can send a diplomat to engage them, and they will just give you a few thousand gold, seemingly so that you are in good terms with them and don't declare war on them. So you can do that until either you're comfortable attacking them at Seleucia, or they stop agreeing to such a trade deal, because that's a great source of money for you in the early game as well. For your mid-game strategy, you should be able to secure Western Asia pretty easily after conquering the 2 settlements Pontus starts off with. Well, I say pretty easily because your ranged units of horse archers should be able to just shell the Greek and Seleucid and Pontic spearmen, or whatever infantry they have, out of existence quite easily. You have a very healthy range, which they do not have, and they're also very slow-moving units. Meanwhile, in the far east of the map, you should have an army in Seleucia, and you can use that army to march over towards Hatra and then Antioch to expand your economy further. Once you have Antioch, you'll notice you share a border with Egypt, unless Egypt has already conquered it, in which case you need to focus on deploying heavy spearmen more in your battles to handle the Egyptian chariots, because their spears, their phalanx formation, will be able to stop the chariots before they get too close and just make your units break due to morale loss. You can use those heavy spearmen to just waltz through Egypt and the Levant. You should be able to just move your horse archers frontwards towards the very battle itself in the heat of battle, and they'll just shell until they run out of ammo, and then move them back, and then your spears should be able to handle any chariots rushing you, or the opposing Egyptian spearmen as they come. I believe your heavy spearmen have more morale than any of the units that Egypt should field, so you should be good to go at that point. I recommend conquering Egypt, the actual Nile part of Egypt, by taking Memphis first, due to the Egyptian culture assimilation. That should also stop any culture penalties you have in what you've already conquered in the Levant, namely Jerusalem, which will have a mandatory minus 30% unrest penalty. And now the late game. By this point, all that should be left now are the Romans themselves in Greece and Italy. So I recommend first landing in Greece to fight the Brutii, who are likely there. At this point, I would recommend actually changing your army composition a little bit to have more Armenian legionaries in it, because at this point the Roman infantry will probably have Marian reforms and will therefore be very heavily armored, so your ranged units will not be as effective as against previous armies like in Egypt or in Western Asia. Also, another thing you can do is land in Chersonesos to defeat the Scythians there. They should have 3 settlements near what is the North Black Sea today. And you can also move that army you've had garrisoned in the southern Caucasus that's been defending you against the Scythians, and finally march them north towards Campus Alanii to finish off both Scythia and Parthia. If Parthia still exists, they should have a settlement up in the top right of your campaign map there. And the last thing, after you have a good foothold in Greece, the last thing you can do is land in Italy and defeat the Brutii and win the campaign. Winning the long campaign as Armenia will unlock the achievement Battle Tanks in an Age of Spears, referencing Armenia's tough and mobile cataphract archers. Or it may also be referencing Britney Spears, who was a more popular artist in 2004 during the original Rome 1 heyday. Alright everybody, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for my next faction, Numidia.